I'm Brad Keelor, Director of the Geo-Institute. Welcome to another great episode of Director's Cut. Before we get to the interview, I need to tell you about a contest we're running for the 100th episode of Director's Cut. That's right, we're almost to 100 shows. Our special episode will air November 9th and will feature Geo legend Jim Mitchell as my guest, and you can be involved too. Submit your question for Jim at the link in the show notes below, and if it's chosen, you'll get a $200 discount on registration for Geo-Congress 2023. It's a great way to be involved in Director's Cut and to save a little money on your trip to Los Angeles in March. Thanks for watching, thanks for your questions, and now let's get to this week's episode. I am Brad Keelor. She is Rachelle Mason. Next up on Director's Cut, find out everything you ever wanted to know about geotechnical engineering in the desert. Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Director's Cut. My name is Brad Keelor. I'm the director of the Geo-Institute, and that is why we call this show Director's Cut. Every single week, I sit down with a different GI member who has stories to tell. Some of them are personal, some of them are professional, all of them, every last one of them is fun. If you like what you see today, and I think you will, you should do a few things. You should click like, subscribe, get notifications, and if you do those things in that order, you will be notified every time we post something to the YouTube channel. If you don't know anything about the Geo-Institute, after you watch this interview today, you should head on over to geo-institute.org. While you are there, you will find out that we are a technical society with about 12,000 members, most of whom are geotechnical engineers and or geologists, and we are part of the American Society of Civil Engineers. With all those things out of the way, we will now get to the business of the day, which is episode 98, I believe, of Director's Cut. We're inching closer to 100, and that big episode with geo legend Jim Mitchell. Joining us today from the opposite side of America. She lives a little closer than that, but right now she's on the opposite side of America. From Phoenix, Arizona, where she is a senior geotechnical engineer at WSP, it is Rachelle Mason. Rachelle, welcome.
Thanks, Brad. Thanks for having me.
We are going to have a good time today. That I will guarantee. We will ask 10 questions. 2 of them are the same every single week, and we start with one of those. Describe your job in 45 seconds.
45 seconds. Okay. Well, the quickest way that I describe my job to people outside the geotechnical community is I tell them that my job as a geotechnical engineer is to make sure whatever structure is being built, whether that be a building, a bridge, roads, walls, is not going to sink or fall over. For those who have more inquiring minds, I try to explain to them that we work with structural engineers. Our job is to go out, take samples of the soils, do testing in the field and in the lab, and based off those tests and analysis, we work with the structural engineers to use in their design so that they have a strong enough foundation to hold up whatever they need to.
And see, that's pretty good. And I like that you have different explanations depending on the interests of the party that you're talking to. I don't often bring this up, but there was some Reader's Digest survey that said geotechnical engineering was the most boring job in America for like 7 years in a row. I think it's important for us as a community to make it sound more exciting. Do you ever have anybody tell you that what you do sounds boring?
Well, is that a pun? No, I'm just kidding about that.
And that took me a minute too. Very good.
Well, no, actually the opposite. I think because a lot of people don't know what geotechnical engineering is, that, they think it sounds glamorous and, well, I mean, it is technical, but, I don't think they know too much about us, being behind a drill rig for hours on end each day, and actually literally getting dirt underneath our fingernails. So when people, don't know a lot, I think their interest peaks and they think it's interesting.
That's pretty good. Oh, I said we're almost 100 shows in. That's the first time that anybody's ever used the word glamorous on Director's Cut. So I like that. We'll write that one down. Everybody can remember that for the next time we do a Director's Cut scavenger hunt. We have to ask fun questions on Director's Cut too, and we're going to get right into those next. And we also ask a lot of nostalgic questions, and so this is one of those too. What trend from your childhood or teen years do you wish would come back?
All right. So I was born in the 80s, grew up a 90s kid. And, I think what I would probably want to come back is Tamagotchis. I actually found myself on eBay a couple of years ago trying, because I didn't want, the new improved Tamagotchi. I wanted the vintage Tamagotchi. So I was kind of looking around to see if I could find one, but I thought they were cute. They're easy pets to take care of. Don't have to bury them.
I sort of agree with you, but I was 17 when those came out, and I got one around that time, and I brought it to work with me. And I worked at a flower shop, and I would hang it up by its little chain so that I could monitor its progress all day. And I don't think I ever made it more than about 10 days. Do you remember what your best was?
I think we managed to keep them alive for at least a few weeks. I have an identical twin sister, so it was always a competition between the two on who could keep theirs alive the longest.
Well, that's really good. Yeah, I never made it more than a week or so. Maybe, but with real pets, I do better.
Well, I would hope so. Myself as well. I keep things alive for longer than a few weeks, I promise. Even my house plants.
Next up, we're going to dive into one of the biggest buzzwords, I think, in just about every discipline in the last 10 years. And geotechnical engineering has been no different, and that is sustainability. I believe it is a long-term interest of yours, and the reason you got into geotechnical engineering in the first place. Can you talk about that and maybe a recent project that you worked on where sustainability was involved?
Yeah, so a little bit of my backstory on how I got into engineering. I was a senior in high school, and I was working at a skateboard shop. And one of the owners of the skateboard shop was an electrical engineer at White Sands Missile Range in New Mexico. And, it was about December, and he came up to me and he said, "So you're going to be graduating soon. What are you going to go to college for?" And I said, I don't know yet. I know that I don't want to be a teacher because my mom was a teacher at the time. And, that kind of seemed like maybe that should have been the route I should go. And I said, I don't want to be a teacher, but I really like math and physics. And he was like, "Oh, well, you should become an engineer." And I said, "Okay." And when I was doing, my tours of different colleges, I would get taken into the engineering departments. So I had this idea that I was going to save the world, and whatever type of engineering I chose, I wanted to make sure that it was going to have an impact on the environment. So little naive me, not knowing much about engineering, I was like, well, I should become an environmental engineer because there's environmental in the name, so they must be doing something good. So that's kind of how I ended up in the civil engineering department. And I, was taking environmental engineering classes, not really understanding that a lot of environmental engineering has to do with wastewater treatment plants. So I kind of decided maybe that wasn't the route I wanted to go. So then I said, okay, I'm going to do water resources. Water's important, especially in New Mexico. There's, always litigations going on about it. I was like, I'm going to do water resources. So I started kind of shifting my focus that way and doing those courses. And then I took my first soil mechanics class, and I just fell in love with it. I mean, it was honestly, out of everything that I had seen within civil engineering, it was the thing that came the easiest to me. It made the most sense to me. And, I've always been an outdoors person, so I felt like maybe that would kind of be the type of career path that would keep me, keep me kind of outside and being active outside as well.
Well, that's really good. So when you drive by like a wastewater treatment plant, do you wave and just
Well, and the funny thing is, like, I do geotechnical investigation reports for wastewater treatment plants. So, I mean, at the end of the day, you're still involved in all these
Yeah.
other aspects, right? Because everything touches the ground. So you're going to have geotech engineering for almost essentially everything then when it comes to civil engineering.
I can't imagine that you are alone in thinking that you were going to save the world by going into this field. I, how often do you think about that now? I think that's a really important attitude to have. Otherwise, you can get really beaten down and think, oh, I'm doing something that has no major impact on the world. I can see how it would be really challenging if you didn't approach life that way.
Right. And, I think, obviously now I have a little bit more experience under my belt and, realize that myself, my soul self cannot change the world. But, I think there's things that we can do every day in every one of our jobs that we have. Particularly, one thing that I've been a part of is one of the last projects I was on when I left New Mexico was a Department of Transportation interchange project. And the civil firm we were teamed with were pursuing the Institute for Sustainable Infrastructure Envision verification and rating for this project. And it was such a great project to be a part of because every aspect from beginning to end was always questions with how can we do this more sustainably? For that project, I know out in the Southwest, a lot of bridge design is, you got your bridge abutments and they're supported on drilled shafts or driven piles, some type of pier system. Well, we had to think about that a little bit in more depth and detail. And, how can we do something that maybe we're not using so much concrete when, we design and build these bridges. And so what we ended up doing was the bridge abutments of there's 4 bridges, 2 crossovers. We ended up doing spread footings on top of MSC walls because it was, we had a lot of soils out there that we could reuse to build these walls. And then right off the bat, you take out all of that concrete that would be needed for those drilled piers. So I think now my thought has changed with, well, what are the small impacts that I can make every day in order to be more sustainable and, maybe not necessarily save the world, but make the world a better place. We need to keep this world going and, resources available for futures to come.
That's pretty inspirational. We're going to go from that and saving the world to something that many people would argue is ruining the world, and that is reality television. If you could create a reality TV show, what would it be about?
I will admit that reality TV is kind of, a guilty pleasure of mine, which I'm sure there are a lot of closeted people out there who enjoy reality TV shows. But I guess my reality TV show would be to kind of counter that and have a reality TV show about the people who create and shoot these TV shows. Because yeah, mind blown, right? Well, I think we need to put it out there that these are not real things. Like these are, a lot of this is, produced and made up, and, talking about the influencer culture too, that's so prevalent today. Is like, this isn't, people are getting these perceptions that this is how people really live and that their lives are grandiose like this.
Right.
And it's not really like that. I mean, we see, with movies, it was easy to kind of have that disconnect because you knew it was a movie and these are actors. But with reality TV, it's just completely morphed people's perceptions of how things are.
Except, so here we're going to nerd out on reality TV here. This really is not what I expected to do today. In the late 1800s, when film started, there was an expectation that everything in it would be realistic and that people wouldn't watch if something fictional was on the screen. And it took years for directors to break that down and stuff. It's kind of fascinating now that you say this here, that we kind of skipped over that with reality TV, where everything, I guess the real world, maybe you could make the argument, but everything was hyper produced very quickly. In the span of, just a couple of years, it went from not even this genre not even existing to I would watch this show. Let me tell you, that would be really good. So what's your favorite reality show that's actually on TV now?
Oh, man. I'm really into Real Housewives. I'm not going to lie.
Do you watch all of them?
Not all of them. So I really like New Jersey. That's probably my favorite one. And then I also like Beverly Hills, which that's causing a lot of drama.
So real talk here. I hypothesize that no one outside of DC cares about the DC one. Is that about right?
I didn't even know there was a DC one.
There you go.
I know there's a Potomac one.
Yeah, that's DC.
Maryland.
That's
right.
DC.
Oh, that's the DC one. Yeah. Just not my type of drama, I guess.
We're going to talk some more about New Mexico now. I think I told you before the interview, I know 3 members from New Mexico who are originally grew up, born and raised in New Mexico, and that's you, Damian Siebert, and Bob Holtz, geo legend Bob Holtz. For you, what was the most unique thing about growing up in New Mexico?
Most unique thing, green chili. No, I'm just kidding. A green chili is great. But, well, and I'm sure this is true for a lot of other places, but growing up, my family, we always lived outside the city limits in a rural area. Our house backed up to a irrigation canal, and behind that, it was just all agricultural fields. We had cotton back there, we had corn, we had alfalfa. And so, we're out there in the middle of nowhere, essentially. There's no sidewalks. So growing up, I couldn't ride a skateboard. It was really hard to rollerblade. We had maybe about 5 kids or friends that were within a mile radius of us. And we were always out exploring on our bikes. I don't know if my mom even knew where we were half the time. We were always out exploring, building forts, playing with the animals we had out there. And so I think that kind of helped groom me into the person I am today, of course, because I wasn't sitting in front of TVs or playing video games, or, it was safe for us to kind of be out on our own and do our own exploring and just kind of live that country life that I know a lot of people don't really get to experience.
Well, and I feel like it's very different out there than it is even out here, because I have 2 things. One is more an observation. The first time I went to New Mexico, I was in Albuquerque, and I noticed there were places where the city just ended. Like on one side of the street, there was stuff, houses or businesses or whatever. And the other side of the street was just like desert, or it was the foot of a mountain. And I had never seen anything like that in my life. The other thing, and this is the hard hitting stuff that people come to Director's Cut for. How did you trick or treat? We got Halloween coming up. This is an important question.
Well, we didn't trick or treat out there. We had to drive into the city and then go to my grandparents' house and walk around their neighborhood. Because you're right. Yeah, yeah. A lot of things, we would see stuff on TV and just be like, wow, like this is how other kids are living. Like, I wonder what that's like. So yeah, we just made do with what we got and just had a different experience growing up.
That is fantastic. The other question that we ask everybody when they come on the show is, how did you first get involved in ASCE and GI?
So I had gone to a couple of ASCE meetings when I was in school, but I was more involved in some other groups and clubs. So I started my career out in New Mexico, and about 3.5 years ago, I decided that I wanted to move to Phoenix. I had had a summer internship out there during my undergrad for 3 summers, and I knew that that was the place I wanted to end up. So when I moved to Phoenix, I knew I needed to get involved in something so I could start networking and building my career in Arizona, because I really didn't know anybody when I moved out there in terms of people in the community. And I also wanted to push myself in terms of interfacing with people. I tend to be very shy and intimidated. So I thought, okay, this is going to get me out there, get me in front of people, and kind of force me to start talking and working on interpersonal things that I wanted to work with. It just so happened that my supervisor and mentor at the company that I had come to work for in Phoenix was the outgoing Arizona GI chair. And he is the one who essentially brought me on and got me involved and onto the Arizona chapter board.
Which I feel like I make this pitch almost every week on Director's Cut to our dear viewers. If you don't know your local group, it's easy to find out. You just go over to geo-institute.org. You can look on the map. You can find a chapter that's close to you. We have 60 of them. There's probably one near you. Rachelle, what has been the most rewarding part of being involved in the local group for you?
The most rewarding thing is getting to meet everybody, to be honest. You'll be surprised that, you end up working with a lot of the people that show up to these meetings. They may not be just clients. They're also people at competing companies, but that doesn't mean that you're not teaming with them on certain projects and you're going to have to be working together. The one thing that I really like about our Arizona chapter is we're all relatively, young engineers, and it's so refreshing to have, a group that you can be in and kind of relate to, especially because, our industry does have a lot of older people, and they tend to be the people that are most active in these types of groups. So it's just good to finally feel like I have a place to kind of connect and belong to.
Well, we're happy to have you, and you were out at the chapter summit earlier this year in Reston, and I think that was a good experience. We have to talk about some other fun stuff now, and I don't know if this next one is fun or not. Everybody has little habits when they're driving on the road. Now past President Bob Gilbert has compared riding with me to a NASCAR experience. For you, Rachelle, what is the most annoying thing about the way you drive?
Well, that's probably going to be kind of the opposite of what the qualm is with your driving. And I'm going to partially blame this on my truck, because my truck does not have cruise control. And I tend to be a little bit of a daydreamer. Thoughts are always running in my head. So a lot of the times I'll find when I'm, specifically on long road trips on the highway, I'll start slowing down, and all of a sudden, speed limit 75 and I've been doing 60 the past 10 minutes, not even realizing it. And I'm sure that annoys not only the people that are riding with me, but anyone that has to be behind me during that time. But I like to think that I'm a defensive driver, so therefore I'm a safe driver.
Well, that's good. I like to say that you can be a defensive driver at any speed. It's just how quickly you decide you're going to proceed. That's good. We have to ask a question, too, about your alma mater, where you got your bachelor's and your master's degrees, I believe, and that is New Mexico State University. I find it fascinating that NMSU has people involved in such cutting edge civil engineering research, whether it's bio-inspired geotechnics, lunar geotechnics, whatever it is. Why are they involved in so much cutting edge research?
Well, one thing I will say about NMSU is that we have fantastic engineering programs across the board. We got aeronautical, mechanical, electrical, chemical, and of course, civil. One thing about these programs is the involvement starts with the faculty. And the faculty are the ones that are going to drive this cutting edge research, because they not only have to want to be interested in it, there's a lot of work that goes into going out there and getting funding and getting these research topics going. So the involvement starts with the faculty, and Dr. Paola Bandini and Dr. Douglas Cortez have put in a lot of hard work directing these programs and doing this research for NMSU.
Gave a couple of shout outs there. If anybody's interested, you can go watch Douglas Cortez give a GeoPit talk, and we'll put the link down in the show notes below where you're watching this right now, from Geo-Congress this year in Charlotte on lunar geotechnics. And Paola Bandini, of course, is a member of our Technical Coordination Council, so New Mexico State very well represented this year in GI. We have just a meager 2 questions left, but they're fun. If anybody hasn't met you in person, now they can see. You have to put your arms up.
Oh, okay.
You have many tattoos.
I do.
What is the strangest reaction you've ever gotten to your tattoos?
Well, my grandmother has tried to lick her finger and rub them off, much to her dismay. That did not take care of the problem. I really haven't gotten too many strange reactions. I've definitely noticed some hard stares at them while I'm trying to have a conversation with somebody. But if anything, they're a conversation piece. And a lot of people, like to ask questions. And then they like to tell you that they've always wanted one. And then they give you whatever their reason is on why they didn't get one. And I just sit there and smile and nod.
Well, this goes into a very logical follow-up question then. What's the best reason that you've heard why somebody didn't get one? Or what's the most common, maybe?
The most common is, I don't know what to get, which is a very good reason to not get a tattoo. Right. If you are second guessing it right off the bat.
Well, that's actually a good point. But I was going to say, I feel like that's kind of a cop-out, right? Because that's like, many people don't know what they want to eat that week, and yet they still manage to go to the grocery store and buy food. Like, you figure it out.
Yeah, for me, my tattoos, they're artwork, of course. I actually have a lot of tattoos that were drawn for me from personal friends of mine, but they're also kind of like a time stamp for me. I know exactly, where I was at in my life when I had this tattoo, and a lot of my tattoos do have specific meanings. I've had tattoos for people that have passed away, and get matching tattoos with people. So I think tattoos are definitely personal for people. But I think the taboo of tattoos is finally weaning off. I had a coworker last year tell me he always wanted one, but was afraid that it was going to affect his job or his career. And I can tell you this, I've never once, to my knowledge, been denied a job or promotion because of my tattoos. If anything, I think they've helped me while in the field because I look more like a contractor or a driller than a stuffy engineer. So it kind of, kind of gets those people a little bit more laid back with me. And it's just kind of easier to work with people when they kind of view you as an equal instead of, you don't belong here kind of thing.
Oh, that's really good. And see, this is the beauty of Director's Cut. A lot of these questions don't go where you think they're going to go. And so that was really good. So we're down to our final one. And yes, we are going to talk about the desert one more time. And this is the one we teased with at the top of the show. What do most people not understand about geotechnical engineering in the desert?
Well, I think one common misconception is the desert is just this vast, flat wasteland of cacti and tumbleweeds, but we have a little bit of everything out here in terms of geology due to the high and low deserts. We encounter bedrock, we have mountains, we have, deep layers of sandy soils. We have fine-grained soils, coarse-grained soils, a mixture of the two, cemented soils, uncemented soils, just, deep water tables that sometimes don't affect us at all to where, you got the groundwater right at the top of the ground and, collapsible soil, swell potential. So the list goes on and on. Because of this, you need to have a well-rounded toolbox of geotechnical knowledge because chances are you will encounter some variation of geotechnical issues from project to project, even while working within just a few miles of a project site that you worked on previously and done a geotech report for. So I think we have a lot to offer in the desert, and it's a lot more than what people assume.
That's great. And you made it through all 10 questions. And you told everybody everything they need to know about geotechnical engineering in the desert. I think you're right, though. Out east, we do tend to look at the desert as this monolithic thing that's the same whether you're in southern Utah or, Yuma or anywhere out west as we see it. And we don't realize how far apart a lot of things are. It's funny, Obviously, I've lived in the United States all my life, and there are many geographic things I do not know about the West.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, and there's even geohazards. In Arizona, because of all the groundwater pumping, we have a lot of land fissures, and those weren't there 100 years ago, and now it's something that we have to take into consideration when we're out there doing projects.
That is fantastic. Rachelle, you made it through all 10 questions. You did so with flying colors. For our viewers, again, if you liked what you saw today, and you're here at the end, so you probably did, click like, subscribe, get notifications. We'll let you know every single time we post something to the YouTube channel. Rachelle, thank you. This was
You're
fun.
welcome. Yeah, thank you, Brad. I had a great time.
And you'll be able to trick or treat this year because you live in a more urban area now. If you so desire, you don't have to drive anywhere.
Yep, big city life for me now.
Get those full size Snickers bars.
Yep.
And we will see everybody next week with another brand new Director's Cut.